I'm Allie with Potomac Beads, and today I wanted to show you a way to use this really cool antique silver 2-hold clasp that has a little space in here for a chaton or a bead in my case, and I'm actually going to be making this to have a more masculine look. So there's always questions about what to make for men that they will actually wear, because a lot of jewelry, let's face it, is a little bit more feminine in nature, and there's not a lot geared towards the male. Most things that are geared towards men are just with simple leather and with metal. So I thought I would show you a way to use something with beads and with beaded jewelry. If you need any of the supplies to do this masculine leather wrap bracelet, below the video there's a date stamp that says when the video was published, and underneath there's some links that you can purchase from us online at potomacbeads.com and potomacbeads.eu, and we'd be happy to ship you the materials so you can make along. For this design, I am going to be showing you how to do leather wrap. We're going to be sewing the beads in between the 2 rows of leather, and then we're going to learn how to use some E6000 glue, get the ending, the spacing, and that threading technique as well. For it, I'm going to be using 1.5 millimeter leather, and I have a dark brown color. And you're going to need double the length of the wrist of the bracelet that you're making it. So you're also going to need, in addition to double that, because you are doubling the thread over, you're going to want an extra 2 inches, an inch at each end to play around with and to make it fit comfortably on the wrist. I'm also going to be using 4 millimeter gemstones, and these are lava stone, which have that nice masculine look to them. They're also great for essential oils. You can drop those in there, and that's 4 millimeter. Again, you're going to need enough to make the length of the wrist. The clasp, again, that I'll be using has that almost nautical look with that 2-hold clasp that will put the leather in the ends, and then we'll be making a loop out of the leather to go around that little shank. Because it is geared towards men, I'll be using 0.008 wildfire thread. This thread is the bigger of the 2 wildfire sizes, and we'll be using approximately 5 feet of that with a size 10 needle. You may want to have a thread zap or a thread burner handy to burn down the ends of your thread, and some super glue glue if you would like to glue down the ends of the thread as well. For the actual placement of something inside the clasp, you'll want to use some E6000 glue. You also want to make sure you have a nice workable surface, so when you cut apart your strand of beads and get your leather cut as well, they don't go everywhere, and you have a nice casual kind of place to work that is going to make you more efficient in your task of creating this jewelry. To get started, I want you to have 5 feet of your thread on a size 10 needle, and we'll get our leather cut, again double your length plus additional 2 inches, and then also cut apart my beads from their strands so we can get ready to sew them in place. For starters, what I need to do is make sure and decide what loop size I'm going to have to go around this shank of the clasp. I'm using, again, that 1.5 millimeter leather. You can use 2, you can use 3, even 4 millimeter will fit comfortably in that space that's allowed right underneath that bead. From here, I'm going to put the leather around the shank and make sure that it sits comfortably, that it can go in and out, but that it's not so big that it's really going to have a lot of space to escape when you are wearing it. From here, I have my loop size, and I'm kind of pinching that in place. You can even, with the leather, this is Greek leather, you can even make a little indentation in the leather. But what you're going to do is grab your thread and needle and go to the very end of that thread. We're going to simply tie a knot, leaving about 1 inch of thread after the very end around the leather. So I'm going to make a loop, kind of slide that leather in there. And I'm making sure, again, that the leather is equal on either side. So I have an equal amount. Give a nice tight pull. And again, we have extra here because I'm going to reinforce it to have, again, that masculine look. Make sure, again, that the clasp on the other side is still going to fit inside. Take the leather around, or the thread rather, around the leather a couple times. We'll do 4 times there, and then knot it again. I'm going to knot one more time, and the knot itself will really get hidden by the time you put on the beads, and you can also put it to the underside of the bracelet, so make sure that I would rather have more knots and have it nice and closed than not enough. And again, getting that wrapping style of the actual thread around the end keeps with that industrial masculine thing that we have going on. So once I have the knot all tied off, it's time to actually separate the leather. We're going to be working with the leather as a channel. Our beads are going to sit between the channel. So I'm cutting those apart here. And the hole for the beads are actually going to sit upright. So they are going to sit on the vertical rather than on the lateral. So the beads and the holes are going to sit right there in between. To begin our leather wrap, and there are other leather wrap videos on our YouTube channel in case you need a little bit more instruction. We're always going to be sewing over the top of the leather and then coming out kind of towards the bottom. Whatever you do in whatever style you like of doing this leather wrap, you want to make sure to be consistent. So I'm going to have my needle coming out in between the two pieces of leather. So again, you're going to have that little tail at the end, and then we have the two pieces of leather with the thread coming out the middle. You're going to grab your first lava stone bead, let that drop down till it's placed between the leather. And I'm leaving myself a little bit of space there. You can see that little triangle above the bead because I don't want it so tight that it's going to make the leather sit awkward. If you want to, you can use a couple seed beads, some small 11-0 seed beads to keep that triangle in place. You could start with 1 and then go to 2 and then 2 again. The thread then coming out of the lava stone is going to go over the thread, or over the leather rather. Remember I said we're always going over. Tucking underneath, and then we're going to sew through that lava stone again with the needle coming out above the lower piece of leather. That's going to put a loop of thread around that upper leather. We're going to sew back through the lava stone one more time. Again, the thread's coming over the top of the bottom piece of leather. Then the needle's going underneath through the lava stone and out the top again. So that's the third time we have thread going through that lava stone. Again, this is a male bracelet, and that's a great way to make sure that it is durable. Taking the thread then, we're going to go over the top of the leather and come so that the thread is in between the leather coming out. Pick up your next lava stone bead. And the lava stone can be a little obnoxious to pick up because it does have all of those little pores and that porousness to it. So you kind of have to make sure you're picking up a hole and not just a little crater. Again, thread coming out of the lava stone on the bottom leather, going over the top of the leather, and then the needle's going to go under and through the bead, over to the opposite side to that upper end of the leather. And if you notice at all that your thread kind of gets twisted or doesn't look right, just wiggle it around a little bit, pull a little tighter, and make sure that you have that nice looped look. Over the top then of the leather at the top, you're going to go with the needle underneath through the lava stone again and out the bottom. So now you see that you have one piece of thread going through the lava stone from the first piece at the bottom, 2 at the top. The next one is going to be 1 at the top, and you can see then we have 2 at the bottom, almost creating a zigzag effect. This is going to go opposite with every bead that you pick up, because you're always getting 3 strands of that nice wildfire thread through each bead. So coming out between the pieces of leather, you're going to put on your lava stone, take the thread and needle around the top and underneath through that lava stone, and making sure that it's coming out above the thread, or above the leather rather. Making a nice loop, going up and around, back through the lava stone, again coming out the top. Some people will prefer to kind of work on a clipboard when they're doing this, that they like to clip it, or a hemp macrame board. I like to work with it and keep it in my hands because I have more freedom then over where the thread is going. As you're making it, you want to make sure that these beads are sitting nice and next to one another, but they're not touching and not squished against one another. That's going to allow them to roll on the design and also leave enough space that as you turn and put it on your wrist, they're not bunching up and creating a bunching effect. So again, we're on to the next bead. I'm going to go over the top of the leather. My thread is going to come out between the 2 pieces of leather. I add on my next bead, push that up against the last bead, go over the top of the leather, and sew with the needle coming through the middle towards the top on the other side. And if you're a left-handed person and you want to sew to the bottom, just be consistent with whichever you're doing, going either over the top first or underneath first. You can see here I got caught on that lower leather. Let's take that out and pull. So again, with the black thread and the brown leather, you can see it a little bit. You can see that 2, 1, 2, 1. And then at the bottom, it's going to alternate 1, 2, 1, 2. So I'm going to continue adding on. For a male size wrist, you're usually going to make it about 8 inches or so. I'm going to continue adding on my lava stone beads to increase my length. And then as we get towards the end, we will get ready to, I'll show you how we're going to tie off the thread, as well as how we're going to glue into our clasp. As you finish putting on your beads to accommodate the wrist size that you're trying to make, you'll notice that there is spacing a little bit between the beads. Again, I don't want to make them so tight that you're not going to have any movement, or that as you wear it over time that they get really pushed together and bunched up. That's a very common problem with a lot of the leather wraps. The other thing that you want to make sure of is that you do not pull one direction or another along the leather, so that the bracelet is not kind of arching in one direction or the other. You want to make sure that your loop sits even between the middle of the beads, if you would kind of draw the line. Make sure that your loop still accommodates the end of the clasp, or a button if you're using that. And then also that the leather sits in a nice channel going both ways. So normally at the end of a bracelet like this, you would take the cording, kind of wrap it around just like we did at the beginning, and knot it off. Because the leather is going to sit separated in this channel and be glued in with the E6000 glue, I'm going to knot off the thread a little bit differently. With my thread, because the pumice stone or the lava stone has nice holes to it, I'm going to go back through the last bead 2 more times. That's going to put 5 pieces of thread through that bead. So the last one might get a little tight because again, we're using that thicker beadalon, but it's going to almost hold the thread in there, oops, right away. Make that loop there. So there's more threads that are passing through that last bead so that the thread and the bead is kind of stable. It holds the line and it's not going to pop off easily. I'm actually going to go through one more time. I want to go through until it's nice and tight fit, and sew through to the other side since I can. From here then I'm going to take my thread and needle, go around towards the inside of the leather, making a loop like I'm going to tie a knot. So you can see it's going to go around the leather, and I'm going to sew through that knot just like a sewer's knot would be. One time and then a second time. I'm going to pull that thread then nice and tightly next to that last bead without pushing the beads down. And then it's going to be a tight fit, but I'm going to sew through that lava stone one more time after doing that knot. And wiggle that through. If it won't allow you, that's fine. You can burn off right after. My intention was to wiggle that bead through, or that needle through, and then burn off, there we go, on the opposite side of that knot. So almost pulling that knot inside the bead. Again, just making sure that it's sitting nice and smooth and that you haven't pulled the leather one way or the other. Now I'm going to take my thread zap or my thread burner, give myself a burn, have a little bit of leather there or thread at the end, and burn that down with a burner. Again, if you want to, you can use some glue and glue as well. That's up to you. I did already go back and actually burn down the thread on the other end as well, just so it wasn't sticking up there. As we get to the end then, if you would have a traditional clasp to put on or a button, you could actually have sewed it on with the thread that was already there. What we're going to do is figure out exactly how much I need to leave on for my leather in order to glue it into the ending. So I have my leather in there, and you can see I'm taking it out to see exactly how much is going to stick in there. Now obviously I need to trim my leather down here at the top, which you can do with a thread cutter, or a wire cutter, or with scissors. So I'm going to take that and cut that same amount left at the end of my leather. Take those leather scraps and just discard them right away if you want, or you can hang on to them. And then you're going to grab your E6000 glue. We're going to glue the ends nice and heavy of the end of that cording. And I'm going to put it right into those holes of the clasp. And in my mind with this E6000 and the men's wear, it's better to put more in than not enough. I'd rather pick a little bit off the outside as I'm working with it than have the leather come out. Because the leather is a little bit smaller, it'll accommodate up to 2.5 millimeter for this clasp. I'm going to drop a little bit more glue down into that hole. And then you can take your needle and thread, and using the needle, kind of push down the glue into that crevice. And then any extra glue you can just wipe off, or you can wait till it dries, and then it almost becomes plastic-like, and you can kind of pick off the ends there. I'm going to make sure that it's pushed in there nice and tightly. And then my last thing to glue in is my little lava stone there in the middle. This clasp is designed with a chaton in mind, which is a pointed back crystal. But obviously for the male look, I don't want to put a crystal in there. I want to continue with this masculine look. So I put a little bit of glue in there. The lava stone does have a hole. I don't want to see that hole sticking up. So I'm going to try to make sure, and I can even put it inside a needle here. And it's going to sit side to side. And keep in mind you want a lot of glue on there because the lava stone is porous and will soak up some of that glue. Any extra glue that you have sitting around there, you can use your needle to kind of pull that off. It is a nice craft glue, but it's not a super fast drying glue, so that allows you a little bit of time to smooth that out and get rid of some of that glue that may end up on the outside. So once I have that in, I'm going to push that in, hold this for a little bit of time, making sure that those pieces of leather stay in there and that leather end gets fixed inside the clasp. From there then I will have the opportunity to, after that dries, put the loop over the clasp and finish up the bracelet. Once the glue completely dries, then your piece is completed, and I haven't let it cure for the full time that I think and that I usually allow, which is about 12 hours for that glue to really set in, especially if it's humid out. That's going to make it a little bit longer for it to set. The E6000 I think does say something about 30 minutes. I like it a good 12 hours so that way it can completely set. But this gives you a nice idea for some more masculine jewelry that does include beads, has that lava stone look for it. If any of you again are into that essential oils, this is always a great bracelet for that as well, having that nice lava stone that you can drip onto because of its porousness. So again, the main key elements are making sure that when you're doing your thread and going through your bead, you have 3 threads through each bead. You also want to make sure that the beads are not too close on the bracelet, that they're going to smack against one another, which would also, in the case of the lava stone, which is a little bit more delicate, actually break off pieces of it. You can do this with any size bead, and if you are using a bigger bead than a 4 millimeter, you may want to start out near the knot with a larger bead. Anything bigger than a 6 millimeter bead with this particular clasp will go in at the end rather than sit exactly separated if you are using this same style of a clasp. Again, if you need any of these materials, you can go back to the beginning of the video or to the bottom of the video where there's the date stamp that says when the video was published, and click on the down arrow to show more options, which will give you links to purchase from us at potomacbeads.com and potomacbeads.eu. Again, you can always stay connected with us to get regular updates on new products, new ideas, and what's going on in the beading world by subscribing to this YouTube channel. You can also stay communicating with us via social media, as well as joining our beading group for beading and jewelry making. And it's a great chance to interact with a wonderful beading community, get some ideas, share some feedback, and really just have fun with all the inspiration that is there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making this nice looped over men's leather wrap bracelet.